My name is Officer Edward Campbell,
My name is Ruth Ann Campbell.
and I was hit and severely injured by a drunk driver. Most of my life I've wanted to be a law enforcement officer. I'd say it really came to fruition when I was in high school.
Edward and I met in Pensacola at college. We have been married for going on 8 years, but been together for closer to 11 years.
I started with the Gadsden County Sheriff's Office as a sheriff's deputy back in 2019. And I worked there for about 1.5 years. And then I came over here to the Tallahassee Police Department, so just around 3.5 years.
Being married to someone in law enforcement comes with a lot of challenges, and one of them is the harsh realization that they may never come home. And having gone through what we've gone through with this impaired driving crash that's impacted our family definitely brings to light those fears and is something that we face every day.
The day of the crash was a pretty normal day. I was actually working a special assignment, so I came in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I got off at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that day was pretty interesting. I came into work and they said, you're going to be escorting Santa around Gadsden County and you're going to be helping him hand out presents to kids. After my shift was over, I got off work right around 1:45, 2 o'clock, and I got off the Thomas Road exit in Tallahassee. I was heading home. I remember stopping at the stoplight, and there was an officer for Tallahassee. I remember he was to my right-hand side. And if you're at the intersection, anyone that knows this area would say you can't see to your left, which would be the north side of the road. Light turned green, started going through the intersection. I looked left, and I thought, oh my God, I'm probably gonna die because there was a truck coming towards me. And then everything goes pretty black. I remember bits and pieces here and there. I vaguely remember people trying to talk to me. I remember when I got to the hospital bay in Tallahassee, TMH, I remember laying there and just having people surrounding me and having no idea what's going on. You're so disoriented, you're in shock.
So I was home with our 1-year-old sleeping, and originally I heard knocking on our door and thought, since he was supposed to be home around that time, that he had just locked himself out or there was something wrong with the garage door. I looked through the windows and I saw several patrol cars in our driveway. I opened the door and recognized some of his coworkers from Gadsden County Sheriff's Office. They're with a lot of concern on their face. They didn't know if he was alive. They told me that he had been hit by a car and was in a crash on his way home. And they pretty much just focused on the fact that they didn't have any answers, but it did mean a lot to me, because he was fairly early on in his law enforcement career, that his coworkers were very intentional about being the ones to come and get me, even though we lived in Tallahassee. I was also pregnant with our second son at the time, and as we were going, we hadn't told anybody. We were on our way in a couple weeks to go see family, and we're hoping to surprise them with the news that we were expecting. And all of a sudden, all of that was put on hold. And our excitement obviously was put on hold for a long time after that. So I walked into the ER and I just saw wall-to-wall law enforcement just standing in the hallway and waiting for me and waiting for us to get there. So the first 24 hours after the crash in the hospital, he was very unstable. Physically, he would go up and down, and they had to intervene several times with his respiratory care. And eventually, at about 48 hours from the crash, he had to be life flighted to Jacksonville. But he really did not get out of the woods, so to speak, for about a week in the ICU. And then as he started to become more alert, he was very concerned about a lot of different things, mainly concerned about his son and trying to figure out where he was and where he was located and all of the things that he cares about every day.
I believe my wife told me, and this was some time after the crash when I was starting to actually come to, it's about 1.5 weeks, 2 weeks later, that she let me know that it was a drunk driver that hit you, and that's why you're in a hospital bed right now. I had a lot of injuries, all the way from my head to my toes. I had a broken arm in 2 places, a broken leg. I have metal in both my arm and my leg. I broke almost every rib on my left side of my body. Broke my hand, my face, obviously I have scarring up on my face. I broke my nose, and I could probably go on and on. Nerve damage, everything. There was a lot that happened. So rehab was tough. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks to a month, and then I went to inpatient rehab in Jacksonville, Florida. What I'll say about that was an incredibly difficult time. You're basically having to learn how to walk again. You can't get out of bed to go to the bathroom. You can't really do much on your own. Things were tough, and the hardest thing to think about is just a couple weeks prior, you were a normal person. You were at Tom Brown Park running. You were doing normal things. You were hanging out with your friends. You're playing with your son who's 1 year old. And now you're here. You don't know if your life will ever be the same again. Your body is just mending, and you don't know if it's ever going to mend to the way that you want it to. People can see the physical side, but one thing people absolutely can't see is the emotional toll this takes on people. It's hard to explain, and I don't expect people to understand. But the fact that you are not the same person that you once were, that's hard. And honestly, that was just as hard to overcome than all the physical problems.
The challenges lasted well beyond, the weeks and months of being in hospitals. And for our family, the support that we had that carried through past when he came home, when physically he was looking more normal, people moved on. The news stopped telling the story, but our family still struggles with different aspects of this to this day.
I went back to work around 8 months after the crash. I say that I absolutely wanted to return as a law enforcement officer. I know some people have a hard time understanding that, but for me, it was something that it's what I was doing. I felt like I was doing so well in it, and I was getting better. Something like this put me on the sidelines. I worked really hard to get to where I was, and it was disappointing just laying in a hospital bed, seeing all your friends go out there, having a great time, doing other things, and then also excelling in their careers while you're sitting there on the mend.
I've never seen the strength that I saw in him. I never really appreciated it until it was put to the test through all of this. I also didn't appreciate his drive for law enforcement and his goals to be able to support the community and be there for the important work that happens every day, and really seeing his passion shine through and how hard he has worked to be able to do that again, and be able to do that in a way that impacts families who may down the road have to go through a similar experience has been a challenge for me to see, because I know that it's what he wants to do and what he's going to do for the rest of his life. And it's exciting that he's passionate about it, but there also are a lot of risks involved.
So there wasn't a trial, just for the fact that there was so much evidence against him. There was an officer at the scene. He was actually waiting there at the light as well. So he saw the whole incident. So he ended up having an open plea. And he pled to around 4 years, I believe, incarceration in the Florida State prison system. MAD was very helpful. What made me the most happy was how much they helped my wife. I know that the Tallahassee office was incredibly helpful with helping her deal with a lot of what's going on, and even to this day. I've been invited back since this to do certain things like the victim impact panel. So they've been helpful. They've reached out. They haven't forgotten about us at all.
We had a lot of support on the front end and throughout our time in the hospital. When we returned home, we reconnected with the team at MAD in Florida, and we really appreciated having someone to talk to who understood that it's normal, all of the challenges that we were facing, and that we didn't have to go through it alone. And we appreciated the fact that they were there for us when we needed them. They weren't overbearing and trying to fix everything. They were just there. And they had a lot of different resources that we came to appreciate. My hope for the future is that we come to the realization that this is 100% preventable. There is not any excuse for driving impaired, that every single person who gets a driver's license of any kind is required to come to the realization that this is part of that deal. If you want a driver's license, you are taking responsibility for the fact that you could use that vehicle to harm someone.
When it comes to driving drunk, I'll assure you that you don't drive better. You do not drive better drunk. And the big thing is this day and age, there are so many other options, so many rideshare options that you could take. I'm sure there's a friend that's not impaired that could drive you as well. It's a big deal. Before you even go out, make a plan. I know that I'm a police officer, but aside from that, I'm also a person that was seriously injured by a drunk driver. And I can assure you that driving drunk is never the right answer.